Hello, welcome, Cabbage here. So let's attempt to do a review of Elden Ring, and I can only attempt it because I'm still trying to get my head around what exactly From Software has accomplished here, and because the game is not yet finished. This review is pre-DLC, and it's very possible the game as it is now represents only like 75% of the complete game. No spoilers in the comments, please. And then let's compare to my only other experience with a open world game, Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. For me, Elden Ring checks a lot of boxes, some that I didn't even know I needed checked. And for that reason, I can't stop playing it. As soon as I finish one character playthrough, I almost immediately go into another. It's kind of the game I've been waiting for all my life. It answers so many hopes and wishes I have accumulated over 30 years of gaming. Obviously, it checks the Dark Souls box. I almost always want to be playing a Souls game. In a dark period of my life when I did not own a console, looking back I wonder why I deprived myself like that. Dark Souls 3 was the game I thought about most, in terms of how much I enjoyed it, and how much of it I remembered, and how much I wanted to play it again. And I was wondering, before going into Elden Ring, if it was going to feel similar to Dark Souls 3, or 1, or Bloodborne. And especially if combat was going to be so different and streamlined that it wouldn't feel like Souls. But it does, so yeah, checks that box. Secondly, it checks my Lord of the Rings box. I saw the other Lord of the Rings games since the movies came out, and they never interested me because they look so heavily based on the films. I do love the films, don't get me wrong, I've seen them a bazillion times, but they don't capture how I truly felt tone-wise from reading the books when I was young. The sense of gray, silent chill, of the lingering presence of ages past, great gods and lords, fighting in epic battles, long gone and mostly forgotten, an overall mood of calm, even when in describing battles. Elden Ring captures a lot of that mood. Not totally, and not perfectly, but more than anything I have experienced at this AAA level. It might sound weird to say it, but Elden Ring shows a lot of restraint in its design and presentation. It's not Hollywood, it's not slick, it's not in your face, it's not hyperactive. It's very mature. It's a game for adults, I feel like. Another box Elden Ring checks is for Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. When I first started playing Souls games, I considered them action-adventure games, and then later had the realization that they were action RPGs. But then with Elden Ring, I now feel that it is beyond most video game RPGs and enters true Advanced Dungeons & Dragons territory. Part of that comes from the character building, which is deep and varied, and incremental and super customizable. And part of it comes from going through the world, which feels like a campaign dreamed up by a dungeon master. And just like Dungeons & Dragons, you're free to play your character how you like, make impactful decisions, go in any direction and do things in any order. You create your own adventure as you go. And importantly, it is easy very early in the game to get your character build fairly defined. While in other Souls games, it was possible to make a variety of builds. Because the games were so linear, the early to mid-game always ended up playing pretty similarly, with the character often only coming into its own in the mid or late game. And that has directly led me to replaying Elden Ring so much more than any of the other Souls games. Another worry that I had was how a vast open world would affect replayability, but as it turns out, it's not that big of a hurdle. The first time we play, if we stay away from spoilers and just explore, then of course the world will feel very big. But if we are in a rush to make a build, it can be put together fairly quickly, maybe 2 hours if we know what we want to do. With the horse, and many skippable bosses, and many shortcuts, and infinite fast travel, and so many save points to warp to, getting to where we want to go is oftentimes quick and frictionless. There's not a lot standing between us and our aimed for build, which is very player-friendly design. And on top of all of this, Elden Ring is the first From Software game where I'm really interested in digging into the lore. With previous games, I was happy to just bask in the atmosphere and leave most things vague and a mystery. But Elden Ring has so much history and mythology, and it's all so well put together that I want to know more, and every time I do dig deeper, it's rewarding. For example, in my first playthrough, I gravitated towards Goldmask, and then the other day I watched a Smotown lore video on Goldmask, and it confirmed my suspicions. He really is that cool. But really impressive world building, and I attribute part of that to the involvement of George R.R. Martin. who knows a lot about history and mythology. I think that was a genius match. As for battle, I like it. It feels weighty, feels like all of the previous Souls games. Before going into Elden Ring, another thing I was worried about was I heard a lot of people saying it was faster, harder, more dodge heavy, and I was wondering if it was going to be like a big adjustment or if it was going to become like a button mashy game. But no, my fears were put to rest pretty quickly. The game is very in line with what came before. Millennia is on a different level, but otherwise it's very familiar. And for the record, I don't consider the battle of Bloodborne and Dark Souls all that different either, so maybe that also helped my adjustment to Elden Ring. But yeah, I don't have much more to say about it than that. It's a refinement of the system I've been playing for like 10 years now. But jumping is a great new wrinkle added, and so is dual wielding. I've never played Dark Souls 2, so those are two very fun, powerful mechanics in the game now. One thing I haven't really focused on yet is stance breaking. I would like to do a playthrough or a focus on that. Maybe my favorite thing systems-wise is the skill infusion versatility for weapons using Ashes of War or Wet Blades. I absolutely love this. In previous Souls games, it was a big ol' obtuse thing using rare consumables or rare drops, and we would end up with like, this weapon is my fire weapon, and this weapon is my holy weapon, and this weapon is my elementless buffable weapon, and we can only use them in certain situations. In Elden Ring, however, nothing is permanent, and everything is streamlined, not only with elements and infusions, but skills. It still blows my mind that we can use the same skill on different weapons, or have one weapon use various skills. Compared to previous Souls games, this is a different dimension of customizability, and it's super fun. And yes, Elden Ring can be a hard game, but outside of battle, there's so much that is user-friendly and creatively encouraging that it removes a lot of the friction found in earlier Souls games, and therefore battle is further highlighted. I'm looking back on the earlier Souls titles now. I don't know, I'm going to feel a little bit of hesitation to go to them. Not because of the linearity, not because of the difficulty, but because of the obtuse weapon systems and lack of customization of skills. It's too good, and it's too fun in Elden Ring. Next, we can talk about difficulty. Adjustable difficulty exists in this game, which is kind of a first for a Souls game. But it's not a switch that we flick, it's something that we build towards. Of course, previous titles had better or worse builds, better or worse weapons, better or worse techniques or strategies. But Elden Ring has much more powerful stuff available for most builds, and because of the open world freedom, they can be got much earlier in the game. For me, for example, my easy difficulty button is the Godskin Peeler. I can grab the Poison Mist, I can grab the Dectus Medallions, I can cheese the Godskin Apostle without a fight, and then I can spin to win nearly everything through the final boss. Although I am a battle-hardened From Software vet, I've changed as a gamer over the years, and some days it's nice just to have the option to lower the difficulty through the build, and just cruise, pick up some things I want, unlock the next area, advance some storylines. And it's not just the Godskin Peeler, there are multiple options to kind of unlock that easy mode for the game. Of course, if I'm in the mood for a challenge, I can stop using, certain things. There really has not been a From Software game with this level of customizability to enable this range of difficulty. And I think Elden Ring has a higher ceiling of player power level. It is possible to get more powerful overall than in any previous From Software game, and therefore make Elden Ring easier than previous Souls games. And I think all these reasons explain part of why Elden Ring has been so successful. Here we can talk about some of my dislikes about the game. The L3 button, the crouch dismount button, is still annoying. Millennia, as I mentioned before, is on another level. She requires high knowledge of her moves, high precision with her own moves, and luck, which leads to a greater than usual time investment usually. Thankfully, she is not required to unlock an area or beat the game, and we don't get anything amazing for beating her, so she's an easy skip. Next, dislike. Storyline conditions are vague, but that's like every Souls game. If we pay attention and maybe keep notes, we can follow a lot, but thankfully we don't have to do that because we have the online community to inform each other. There is some missable stuff, and that hurts, but less so than in previous games because I feel so much more motivated to go into a New Game Plus here. Something like getting both the Nephili and Dung Eater puppets in one account motivates me. It makes me want to go into the next run. I look forward to it. Alright, and then we can end with a quick comparison to Legend of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom. First and most importantly, Tears of the Kingdom is not an RPG because it does not include character customization. That's not inherently a bad thing. Depending on what we want from our game, one could be better than the other. For the moment that I played it, it was the perfect game for me. But generally for me, I enjoy RPGs more, so that's why I spent 400 hours on Elden Ring and did only one run on Tears of the Kingdom. However, the depths area of Tears of the Kingdom is amazing. Maybe my favorite zone in any game ever for the look and atmosphere. And then the mapping aspect, I love it so much. I will do another playthrough just so I can 100% the depths again. The biggest weakness of Tears of the Kingdom is maybe no surprise. It's the weapons. But it might be a surprise to hear what my reasoning is for thinking that they are. It's not the breaking. I actually have no problem with that. It's that the weapons are so personalityless. And then with boring weapons, battle becomes a little bit more boring as well. Compare that to Elden Ring, the weapon variety and personality is one of the greatest strengths of the game. Combine that with the customizability with the Ashes of War and the Wet Blades and all that. On a positive note, Tears of the Kingdom often feels like we are playing a Ghibli film, which I will only say for this game and The Last Guardian. I won't even say that for Ni no Kuni, the game made by Ghibli. And then maybe the fiercest point of competition between the two games is story. But they very interestingly go about it in totally different ways. I'll say Tears of the Kingdom has top-tier storytelling, while Elden Ring has top-tier world-building. Very different things, but both encompassed within story. Tears of the Kingdom has a strong plot. It does a great job of making us emotionally invested, and it rewards us with brilliant setups and payoffs. What makes the game feel Ghibli to me, aside from the visuals and music, is how the plot taps into something very pure, something like the child in all of us. I've probably watched like 36 different people play through the Dragon Tears stories, and then the ending, and one of the things that they say most is, why am I crying so much? And I think it's because there is that purity to the themes and presentation that we all know and love deep down inside, but we don't see much anymore, with all of the cynicism and winking and sarcasm everywhere. It taps into something that Ghibli films do so well. They feel magical. And I'm dead serious when I say that Tears of the Kingdom could be taught in film school. Elden Ring, on the other hand, has little plot. I can tell it to you right now, spoiler alert. But our hero is resurrected, they meet Melina, the two of them are stopped at the Erd Tree. Melina sacrifices herself, burns the Erd Tree, our hero mends the Elden Ring, our hero becomes Elden Lord, the end. What Elden Ring has instead is incredible world building, which is all kind of in the background, all buried. We play through the game, and great beauty is presented to us all through the game, but what anything means or where it came from is not presented to us on a plate, and it can take multiple playthroughs to make sense of anything. It's kind of story on hard mode, and just like with battle in Elden Ring, it can be very rewarding to put in the effort to understand the story and finally get it. So that's my review of Elden Ring. Before playing this game, I often said on a desert island, you could give me Dark Souls 1 or 3 or Bloodborne, and I would be perfectly happy. But now the answer is Elden Ring, and the others are on a tier below, which is another way of saying that this is my favorite game of all time. And the game is not even complete yet. It's mind-boggling. Maybe I'll do another review of the game after the DLC. Okay, thanks for watching, and we'll see you again. Take care.